G'day legends, Blake here with another video, and if you've watched my channel you'll know that I've made heaps of beginner fish keeping guides. And I was thinking there's probably a few of you that have watched them for so long now that you're ready to take the next step. So if you kept all the basics and you're ready for a bit of a step up, then stick with this video and we'll run through 10 of my favorites. So the first natural progression I think is from neon tetras, which are a great fish that get many people into the hobby, into something like a Praecox rainbow fish. The reason being is not because they're going to be more difficult to keep, they have similar color, activity, and they're readily going to take any foods and stuff like that, but mainly because it gives an opportunity to learn a new set of skills, and that is to hatch and raise their fry. Praecox rainbow fish are going to breed within an acrylic spawning mob, and they're going to breed every single day. So they're going to give heaps of opportunity for you to identify how to handle and collect the eggs, how to hatch them out, and then how to raise their fry as well. And the good thing is since they are having their eggs every single day, it gives plenty of opportunities to fail, which I think is really handy, especially when you're learning. There'd be no point learning on something that's going to breed once in a blue moon, and then if you do fumble the bag on that one, then you don't have the opportunity to redeem yourself for a long time. So rainbow fish, I think, are a good next step for that one, and worth trying out for sure. The next natural progression I think is most people keep a betta fish in the beginning or a Siamese fighting fish because they're really hardy, they're pretty, and you can keep them in a smaller tank, although that's with an asterisk. And I think there's three options you could go into that. First being you could find a female to accompany that one and try out betta breeding, which is a really great experience. I recommend any fish keeper try out if you haven't already. The other two are species of wild bettas, which one I'm going to recommend is a betta imbellus and the other is a betta rubra for two different reasons. First being betta imbellus is going to have the same breeding and they're very similar to a betta splendens. However, they're just going to have a bit more of a wild look to them. They're going to prefer a more tannic environment, and overall they're just slightly more challenging to keep than a betta splendens. And the betta rubra is because they look totally different, however they're still going to be an anabentoid, but more importantly they're going to breed as a mouth brooder. So even if you have transitioned from betta keeping into betta breeding, then betta rubra provides a whole different challenge again. So I think that those three ways are definitely ways you can develop if you've been a beginner betta keeper for a little while. If you didn't end up going for a betta in the beginning and instead you went for a dwarf gourami, well I think the next logical step is then to go into a sparkling gourami. Sparkling gourami are going to be a little bit harder to feed, they're going to be a little bit harder to see, but again they look really fantastic once you do get them going. They'll provide opportunities to teach yourself how to hatch baby brine shrimp and all those sorts of things, and overall they're just sort of a little bit more niche than the dwarf gourami. But if you do go down that track, again, a blackwater fish tank works really nice, so it can give you experience in that area. Otherwise, they work really well with planted aquariums, so I recommend also accompanying some live plants into that development phase. So for that reason, I reckon sparkling gouramis are a natural progression from dwarf gouramis. For the next one, I think most people start off with cherry shrimp and breed those pretty successfully. So there's a natural progression into either tiger shrimp or crystal shrimp. Most people go into crystal red or black shrimp from there, which isn't too big of a step up, and certainly you can get a lot more fragile shrimp than those guys. However, it usually does lead to getting an RODI system and remineralizing the water and learning about TDS and those sorts of things. So it does make sense as a step up. I also think that orange eye blue tigers are a great progression is into a shrimp that is a bit different, something that you don't see every day. However, is still not much of a step up from cherry shrimp. A lot of the conditions are pretty similar for cherry shrimp and tiger shrimp, so that's also an avenue worth going down in my opinion. Another great beginner fish to start off with if people are looking for something a little bit more aggressive is the convict cichlid. I've also kept my fair share of convicts in the past, and I think they progress nicely into an Apistogramma species, most commonly being the Cacatoides or the Agassizii. They're great two Apistos to start off with, something a bit more peaceful than a convict, a bit more dwarf, but again, goes hand in hand with planted tanks and blackwater and all those sorts of things. So if you're looking to make that progression, there's heaps of different color morphs and things like that that you can get of those two species in particular. So they provide a great opportunity for development if you want to go more into the smaller, compact cichlid area of the hobby. If you got your start in the hobby as a goldfish keeper and you just love to have one big, boisterous showpiece fish and your tank is big enough, then I'd recommend an Oscar. They have heaps of personality, very similar to a goldfish. Again, you're not really going to be a plant keeper if you're into goldfish, so Oscars are not going to be that way either. However, you're going to definitely have a true wet pet, and even though there's a lot of stuff on the internet about how Oscars are always sort of the brunt of jokes and things like that, I've kept at least half a dozen Oscars within my hobby, and I absolutely love them, especially when you give them the time and attention. They can come up and greet you, and they love when you feed them and all that sort of stuff. So they're very interactive. So if you like that aspect of the hobby, then an Oscar could be a great transition up from a goldfish. One of the first fish that a lot of people have experienced breeding is with bristlenose, and they're great for the aquarium hobby. However, a logical transition would then be into the L number plecos, and I'd recommend starting off with like an L333 king tiger pleco. Going to be more of a meat eater than bristlenose. However, beautiful coloration, similar activity, but a little bit more difficult to breed and a bit slower to raise up than your conventional bristlenose. So most people transition into that sort of aspect from bristlenose keeping, so L333 is a good place to start. And of course, another classic beginner aquarium tank is the one full of Mbuna. Most people get caught up with electric yellows, Denisoni and things like that, and I am no different in that aspect. I had the same sort of tank, and I'd recommend transitioning from them into Tanganyikans. Now, they're not going to have the flashy color, however, they show some fantastic behavior. In particular, I've got a tank down there which has some Tropheus in it, some red Tropheus. I've got some Gelidochromis transcriptus, and I've got some shell dwellers. And they're going to be far more interactive with their environment. They're going to be a little bit less aggressive towards each other, unless you put in some conspecifics, which means fish that look similar. And they're just really a joy to watch. So if you like a tank with sand and rocks, maybe you could sprinkle some shells in there and you'd have a similar amount of enjoyment from that. Again, a little bit less common than your Mbuna. So I think that makes sense as a transitional process from bright and flashy to more activity, but yeah, something that provides a different perspective. And the last one, most people go and pick up a whole bunch of cheap guppies from the local fish store, and I'd recommend transitioning from them into a pure strain of guppies, something a bit different, maybe like a Moscow guppy, something that's going to be a bit more long fin and a bit more of a pure strain. And it's good to learn how to manage lines and things like that. So you might have to deal with a little bit of culling, especially if you breed large numbers, which nobody enjoys doing, but it's worth sort of realizing the effects of how those things go down the road if you don't do them. Or you could get a nice wild type species of Endler and do a similar thing. Not really going to be any more difficult to keep. However, just sort of line management, I think, is a good skill to transition from just the scoop a bunch of guppies out of a tank and put them in and see what happens. I think it's a bit more challenging when you want to send them in a direction and teaching yourself how to get from point A to point B of where you want to go. So there you go, guys. That is my 10... So there you go, guys. Those are 10 of my sort of ideas from transitioning to the very basics of the hobby to something a little bit more intermediate, something a little bit more challenging. So if you like the video, it always helps me out to smash like, hit subscribe, and all that fun stuff. If you like my content, there's another video right there for you to watch. Other than that, look after yourself, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.